Hi, my name is Greg Campbell, and I am the Worship and Arts Pastor at Lakeshore Christian Church in Nashville, Tennessee. When I first moved to Nashville, I came down here for production work. I wanted to do live sound. And one of the production companies I worked with had a rehearsal facility. And so I would go in and I would run monitors for bands coming in to rehearse to go out on the road. And during that time, I got to sit behind a lot of talented people and watch their rehearsals. And I can remember one time sitting in a rehearsal that the artist was, who was it? Mark Knopfler. But all right, should I even go there? I shouldn't go there at all. I feel it.
Of course, I don't recognize that name.
When MTV came out, he did the song, I want my MTV.
Okay.
I want my MTV. The reason why I was bringing him up is because I can remember sitting in the rehearsal with him, and he worked on a 2-bar phrase for literally an hour with his drummer. And they would start it, count it in 1, 2, 3, and they'd play the 2-bar phrase, and it was this thing where they would build it up. You know,
Like a Phil Collins trumpet?
not a drum roll, but a cymbal swell type of thing. And Mark kept turning around to the drummer saying, no, not quite like that. I want it more like this, you know. So he'd then puff on a cigarette a couple times and then they'd count in, do it again. And he's like, that's better, but give me just a little bit more here. And they literally worked on that section for like an hour. And it wasn't just the drummer. It was all around. So anyway, I just thought that was cool. But I learned what it was like to listen to somebody who knew exactly what he wanted. And it wasn't like he was yelling at him, you're doing it wrong. It was, try it this way, do it like this. But he was working with a musician that he was paying $1 million to, too.
Yeah.
So you got to do it right. Some of the things that I do, for instance, is all about just being on time. You know, if I'm coming into rehearsal, I need to make sure that I'm on time. And usually what I mean by I'm on time, let's say if rehearsal's to start at 6 o'clock, I'm usually there at 5. So for me, that's on time. And that gives me plenty of time to get things ready. Also, things that I'll do during the week to prepare for rehearsal will be making sure that the MP3s and the chord charts, whatever music and notes that I need to make on the music are posted in advance on our planning center for musicians to access. If I have parts MP3s that I can put up there, I'll put those up there so that vocalists will have something to listen to, or a guitarist will have something to listen to that isolates their particular part. Anything to help make the music come easier during rehearsal, I'll try to do in advance. We always use a click track, and a lot of times we're adding textures to what we do. In other words, textures would be like maybe a rhythm electric guitar or string patches and pads on keyboards. A lot of that's usually done on track, whereas everything else in the band is done live. So working on those tracks and preparing those in advance, do everything you can to make sure that you're prepared. Another thing that I do is, in our case, we don't have a paid person who comes in to set up the PA system. Everybody's volunteer except for me on staff and my associate who works at our second campus. And so a lot of times we'll be preparing lyrics to go on our Pro Presenter. We'll be preparing lighting cues, if there's any of those, any kind of camera moves or anything like that need to be made or notated, we put those notes into place. If there's patching to be done, such as if we're using 3 guitar players instead of 2, patching those and making sure that they're patched correctly so that they show up in the right place on our monitor system as well as our main system. All of that's done in advance so that we can hopefully get into rehearsal quickly and be proficient during rehearsal. Another thing is to try to know your music. Man, I've been in a rehearsal where I've not known the music, and I've had to apologize and say, I didn't have time this week, and it just doesn't make for a good rehearsal. You're setting the example, so be prepared when you come in to be the example of what you expect from them. If they see that I'm taking the steps to be prepared, hopefully that will wear off on them and they'll come in being prepared as well. Also communicate your philosophy of ministry. And I'll talk about that in another video if you haven't already seen it. But understanding the philosophy of ministry also helps with rehearsal as well, because they can come in and if there's a younger player playing, they can help that person and be a teacher at that moment. There are times too when I've come in and somebody's taught me something and I'm a student. So it's really awesome to understand your philosophy of ministry right up front. So anyway, rehearsals, everybody's got to do them, be prepared, do everything in advance, prepare your chord charts correctly. And what I like to do is have all the music in a folder. When a person arrives, they can walk right up to their location. There's a music stand there. It has a folder with the music, and all they have to do is turn the page, and every song is right in order. Every chord chart is right there as well. When it comes to actually leading a rehearsal, all the musicians are in, everything's tuned. I usually start with a word of prayer and kind of get us all focused that way. Everybody's attention's drawn in. And then I'll take a song generally just to play through, and I'm really not stopping during that first song. I'm really letting people get their monitors dialed in so that they can hear and hear well before we go on to the rest of the rehearsal. But after we've done that, it's all about knowing the music and knowing what you want. So if I'm trying to communicate a certain thing on a certain song, I'm listening to certain cues in the song. For instance, if there is a stop where the band is playing, and they're coming up to a location where all of a sudden there's a nice stop. Well, I don't want it to be a diamond. A diamond is something everybody holds through, and a stop everybody hits and cuts off. And so we'll rehearse things like that to make sure that everybody is doing it together. Or if I know the song has some pushes or pulls in the song, a push would be, like going in a 4/4 song, 1, 2, 3, 4, B, 1, 2, and. That would be a push. A pull might be a 1, 2, 3, and. So it's all depends on which direction the accent or the chord changes in the music and the rhythm pushes or pulls. So we'll discuss that to make sure everybody's doing the same thing. We might work on endings a lot, and I stop people and make them go back several times to make sure that we're getting the right thing. I don't just play through it one time, especially if there's a problem on a certain area. We'll work that section out. And I'll work it out maybe 2 or 3 times. If I hear that they've got it, I may do it one last time before moving on to something else. The next big thing is the transitions. If a song is stopping and the next one's starting, who starts the click, who counts us in, where does that go? If there's an automatic transition, a lot of times I'll have a string pad or something that just carries over between the 2 songs, and then we kind of it kind of morphs into the next song that way. But we'll work those transitions so that everybody knows what's happening and what's going on. And so I generally fire lyrics from the stage, and that is, it's all automated. It cues Pro Presenter to fire the lyrics. But sometimes the lyrics aren't the same as the arrangement that we have, and it's not firing the right slide. So at that point, I just want to make sure that my Pro Presenter operator is aware of that, and I will give them control of that instead of it being automated. Or if there's a certain section of the song where I may go back and repeat, we communicate all of that during our rehearsals. And so those are important things to do. But always don't just run through a song. Listen for those accents that that the band needs to move together on. Listen for the transitions and making sure that they're smooth so that you become invisible and God is exemplified You know, if I'm prepared and I go into a worship service, my ultimate goal is to lift Jesus up and to point people to Him. And if I'm there and I don't know my music, or the band doesn't know their music, or the lyrics aren't correct on the computer, or whatever, those can be a distraction that turns people away. And so I want to try to alleviate all of those possible distractions beforehand during rehearsal. Again, love your people, communicate your vision, and they'll come on board with you. Lead by example, and you will be successful in your ministry. That's really about it. Go and rehearse. I don't know.